Welcome to Just Liberty, where justice and liberty meet. I'm Alan Reinach, president of the Church State Council, here with my co-host Bettina Krause, editor of Liberty Magazine, the oldest and best magazine devoted to religious freedom in the nation. And together, Bettina, we are trying, seems impossible, trying to take back liberty from the political extremes. And if there was a political extreme, we're going to talk about it right now.
Yes, absolutely. You may have heard of the Johnson Amendment, which was passed. It's an amendment to the tax code that was passed in 1954. And in essence, it says that nonprofit organizations, including churches, cannot take political positions or partisan or positions that support or endorse a particular political candidate. Now, ever since then, of course, there's been people who have said, we want to use our pulpits to support individual candidates. But, there's been hesitancy to do so because of this amendment. Now, the National Religious Broadcasters Association is the most recent organization to take on the Johnson Amendment in court and to file a lawsuit that says, hey, this is unconstitutional. This amendment is basically silencing our voices and preventing us from political speech, which we believe we're constitutionally entitled to. So what do you think, Alan? Is this an unconstitutional suppression of speech, the Johnson Amendment, or is it a way of protecting the boundaries between church and state?
Well, first off, I want to define the issue a little more narrowly, Bettina. Now, granted, the Supreme Court has equated money with speech, okay, and has put restrictions on efforts to rein in political donations and, campaign contributions and what have you, and said, no, you can, rich people can buy all the politicians they want. The problem with the Johnson Amendment is not about speech. It's really about money.
Sure.
And the reason I say this is because politics in this country is conducted with after-tax dollars. What do I mean by that? We earn our money, we earn our income, and we pay our taxes, and then what we have after we've paid the government, if we want to contribute to, political party or candidate, we're free to do that, right? Politics is funded with after-tax dollars. Churches, however, if you give to a church, those are pre-tax dollars, and you're not taxed on that money. So there's enormous incentive for political organizations to distort the ministry and the mission of religious bodies for political purposes. Religious bodies have a very specific religious and spiritual purpose. If they're Christian, to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ, to do the work of the gospel, and to minister to people, etc. So the influence on churches is enormously destructive. And we're seeing this already. Even with the Johnson Amendment, pastors around the country are being torn in two by the political divisions in their churches. Many are losing their jobs. Many are falling into deep depression, are giving up the ministry. It's a crisis in our churches because pastors are just getting killed, getting over these, political demands and political infighting within churches. So, repealing the Johnson Amendment would just throw fuel on the fire. And I might add, there's not a single denomination in America that wants to do this because church administrators who actually run, bodies of churches, they know better.
Yeah. I'm looking at the press release from the National Broadcasters Association, Religious Broadcasters Association, and they really are sort of refuting a lot of what you say. They're saying for too long, churches have been instructed to remain silent on pressing matters of conscience and conviction during election season. Now, that's interesting because
That's
endorsing
different than endorsing candidates.
It is. It's different to endorsing
And it's just
a candidate.
plain false. It's just plain false. It's propaganda.
It is propaganda because no pastor is required to not talk about issues that impact on morality or that impact on religious conviction during election season. We can, as religious folk and as leaders in church institutions, talk about issues of conscience during election season. What we can't do is say, you must vote for X or else your eternal soul is in danger.
I'm going to conclude this discussion with the hope that no pastor or religious leader is telling people, if you don't vote for this candidate, you're going to hell.
Yeah. That's a good note to leave it on. You know, Alan, I know you have to go, and so I'm going to do this next interview on my own. We've been talking about something of national importance. We're going to be talking in this interview about something of international importance. Well, we are delighted today to have as a special guest Dr. Sima Samar, who is a renowned international human rights advocate. In 2001, she was named Afghanistan's first Minister of Women's Affairs, as well as Deputy Prime Minister of the Afghanistan Interim Administration. And then for a number of years, she also chaired the Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission. But since 2021, since the Taliban took control of the country, Dr. Samar has been in the United States, and she's currently a fellow at the Fletcher School at Tufts University in Massachusetts. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Samar.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
You know, we on this program usually talk about domestic issues of religious freedom, but it seems to me that we need to have more information, more stories about people who are experiencing religious-related repression and other types of repression in other countries as well. Can you give us a sense of what it was like, first of all, growing up in Afghanistan and how you came to become Afghanistan's first Minister of Women's Affairs?
Thank you so much. It's a long journey, I would say.
Yeah.
When I was born in 1957, in the central part of Afghanistan, my father was in a governmental service, so he moved to another province, which was not from the same ethnicity in Afghanistan. I'm Hazara, but that province is mainly Pashtun-dominated city. But it was discrimination, but not at the level that we have today. Not at all. I mean, I was not thinking that I would see the situation that I see today in Afghanistan, or I saw the first Taliban regime. I gone to co-education school, and I gone to co-education university. I studied medicine in Kabul. We were dressing differently. Nobody was bothering us. Today, women can be beat up on the street if they are not dressed the way the authority want them to. So it's a 100% different situation. And although we didn't have a lot of facilities for schools, for boys and girls, but for girls it was more limited. But currently, officially, girls are not able to go to get education beyond 6th grade. And I went to university in 1975. And today, the girls are not allowed to go.
So when you became the Minister for Women's Affairs, what was the situation for women in Afghanistan? Were they able to pursue independent careers? I mean, you've told us that they could get education. Were they able to be in the workforce? I mean, what level of freedom, independence did women have at that time?
Actually, Then I was very active on different issues because we had the USSR in Afghanistan, the coup d'etat, and then their soldiers. We had with the country went really back with war, and then the uh, religion was used as a weapon of war, unfortunately, to stop the advancement of the USSR in the country. We had the first round of Taliban, which was the same. I mean, they were the one who, as soon as they took any province, then they stopped the girls not to go to school, and women to not to work outside of the house, and only the exception was to work on the health sector. But even on the health sector, it was limited number of women who were professionally because of the war, and they couldn't really get the possibility to get education on health sector or to be a medical doctor. We had a shortage of female health staff, and we still have. But then after 9/11, after the intervention and removal of Taliban from power, only removal from power, then it was the possibility, although the environment was still very tough and it was difficult, we didn't have enough human resources. But then after 9/11, when the new administration was established, and it started with the conference in Bonn, mediated by the United Nations. And then they put me as a Minister of Women's Affairs and also one of the vice chair of that interim government. That interim government was only for 6 months. And the reason was that I was active. I was already running a hospital and schools for the girls in Afghanistan and also for the refugees in Pakistan. And I was advocating for women inclusion because we had the Mujahideen government in 1992, after the Russian collapse, actually, the USSR collapse. But then, of course, no women. And it was that during first Taliban regime was the same situation. Afghanistan turned to be the biggest prison for women in the world. And it's still, unfortunately. So that's why they put me as a Minister of Women's Affairs. And then we had another female who was the Minister of Public Health. So we were only the two of us put on that position. But then we advocate for women's inclusion and for the girls' schools. The possibility for the girls and women to get education in Afghanistan was there. So then we had women almost in every sector. We had women in sport, we had women in journalism, we had women in business, we had women in politics, we had 25% of quota system for parliament, which was actually quite high in the region and beyond region, I would say, although quota system is not really, I would say not really a democratic system, but in situation like Afghanistan or some other countries, conservative countries, that is the way to include women on the politics, because we need to be in the decision position in order to be able to bring changes within the. And unfortunately, in 2003, the U.S. attention gone to Iraq and they attack Iraq, and the attention was really turned to Iraq, and Afghanistan was not, although they were there, they had the Americans were there, the NATO forces were there. At one point, we had 47 countries soldier in Afghanistan. The smallest country in the Luxembourg from Europe, they had 10 people, but in medical staff in the airport. But it shows their commitment to Afghanistan. And unfortunately, we missed the opportunity. And I would say that Afghanistan is a collective failure.
Let's just pause here for a moment for people who may not understand fully who the Taliban is, what the Taliban is, and the beliefs and the goals that drive this group. We hear about the Taliban in the news, we read about them, but help us understand really the sort of ideology or the religious beliefs or political beliefs that are driving this group.
Well, I would say that they are also a victim of the Cold War, I would say, because we had a lot of refugees in Afghanistan and in Pakistan and also in Iran. I mean, over 6 million was only in Pakistan, and it was almost same number or maybe higher or little lower in Iran. So, after we had the coup d'etat in Afghanistan in 1978, in 1979, Iran had the revolution. So they had the Islamic government, and they were allowed actually to have in order to stop the USSR advancement. And they denied education for Afghan refugees. Nobody was really thinking about formal education. So what they did, and of course, nobody was really paying attention to women and reproductive rights. And they brought a lot of children and increased the poverty in the camps. So they established this religious school, and they took the Afghan children as young as they were 6 and 7 years and brainwashed them, completely isolated from their family, from their mother. So they are I saw in the camp when they built the madrasas, those religious schools. On that time, I was not thinking that they will become one day the authority in Afghanistan. So it's not according to the actual Islamic belief and Islamic principle, because no other Islamic country is putting women in that level that the Taliban put under pressure or restrict the rights in freedom of women. No other country, even maybe poorer than Afghanistan or similar situation, but no official ban on girls' education. And no official ban on women's work outside of the house. I mean, even our neighboring countries, not very advanced countries, but none of them has this level of limitation of freedom and rights for half of the population. I keep telling the young generation of Afghanistan that if you look at the bird, how they fly, if you break one of the wing, they cannot fly. So they cannot be better than their mother because they are born of their mothers. They cannot be superior than their mothers, and they cannot have higher dignity than their mothers, because everyone, this is the teaching in Islam, that every human being born with dignity, same dignity.
So the approach of the Taliban is not reflective of Islamic values.
No. I mean, you can see during when the Muslims go from all over the world to Mecca, they're walking with open face, without even distinguish of borders. I mean, nobody says this is Afghans and this is Iranian or this is African Muslim from Egypt or Sudan or somewhere. They're walking side by side with open face. They pray together with open face. But for us, Mecca is the holiest place. Afghanistan cannot be holier than Mecca. And no explanation. With their new law, now they say that even the voice of women should not be heard by anyone. Yesterday, the day before yesterday, one of their leaders said that adult women's voice should not be even heard by other women.
So this is what is so hard for me to understand, and I'm sure many of our listeners to understand, this level of repression of women. I mean, help us understand the changes that the Taliban have brought in since they took over in 2021? Help us understand the different spheres in which women's activities have been restricted.
Yes, as I said, that millions of girls were going to school and getting education. Hundreds of thousands of girls were in the university level. We have a lot of girls who got their PhDs and master degrees. We were not providing PhDs in Afghanistan, but outside of Afghanistan, they were going to Iran and India and a lot in Central Asian countries, in the US and the European countries, Australia's. But that is when they were coming back with their master degrees, with their ability and capacity, they were all working. But now they are all banned, and they officially said at the beginning that we do not need master degrees in PhDs for Afghanistan. We only need Taliban style madrasa graduate people. And they keep issuing to their own people graduated from madrasa PhDs and master degrees. And they put those people in place. So they now currently they are allowed to work on the health sector, but in some provinces they say that you cannot go to your job without mahram. So it means that the husband or the brother or the father will be chaperone of her, taking her to the hospital and then bringing her back. So how can they run the family? Because it's unpaid chaperone position. And that's why the economy of the country is almost collapsed, actually. If there's no humanitarian aid, everything will go bad. And it is already in crisis. And we are so unfortunate because of the environment, because of the environment degradation. We have droughts, and then we have rain and flooding and wash out the whole village. It's because everything is so dry that the mountains are and the hills are so dry, no trees, no bushes. And if it's rained, then it's wash out the whole village. To teach on the girls' schools only up to 6th grade. We had a lot of female teachers for the boys' schools. They banned those, even for primary schools. I mean, a female teacher, a mother, if she teaches the boys at the age of 6, 7, it itself changed their attitude towards women. It creates kind of respect for female member of the society as a teacher. I mean, the female teacher is not as aggressive as the male teachers. Usually they use physical violence in some of the schools, but we were monitoring the schools when we were at the Human Rights Commission and not allowing punishment in the schools. Even if the children were doing something wrong, there should not be physical punishment for them. But now everything is allowed.
So the influence of women in society has been just completely pulled back, has been removed. What about just everyday life for women in terms of shopping, in terms of walking in public? What are the rules? What are the restrictions there?
Yeah, they put all these restrictions that they cannot go unnecessary out. I mean, everybody has to explain why they are out. It's too much. They put all those restrictions. I have to say that women in Afghanistan are really resisting against those. They know that they will face violence. The male member of the family will face violence. The drivers who pick up a female passenger without a male chaperone, they will be punished, but they still does it because it's not possible. So, I mean, they still have to go out, otherwise they will die from hunger. Not everybody, because the male member of the family are trying to control them not to face violence, either their female member of the family or themselves, because they said if female member of the family goes out without hijab, the male member of the family will be punished because of her action.
So my question then is, what can be done, if anything, in terms of how can the international community help, if at all?
One thing that international community and all of us, everybody, should not normalize the violation of human rights. That is a scary situation. No matter where it is, no matter where it is, Afghanistan or somewhere in Africa or in this country. That is first thing that everybody should do, and we all have the responsibility to advocate for that. The second thing I believe is that it's completely gender apartheid and codification of this crime in the Convention on Crimes Against Humanity is important. Otherwise, the culture of impunity is really fueled everywhere because they learn from each other. And we hear from the different groups in Africa, sometime in this country, that we should learn from Taliban and apply the same policy on women, because it's a question of control. We know it's politics. It is political action, and they want to control the population. Half of the population under this guise of protection. They claim that they're protecting women. That is the second recommendation. The third recommendation, I think, they have to support civil society and women's group in Afghanistan, and particularly focusing on health and education, because education is key, and of course, access to reproductive health, because we see a lot of increase on mother and child mortality rates in Afghanistan, and we see increase on premature birth because of bad diet and not enough nutritious food, and hard work, actually, because they have to survive. They sit to wave carpet for 8 hours or 10 hours per day, and it's not an easy one. And there's increase on child rights, child marriage and forced marriages. And again, as I said, that normalization of human rights is really a scary trend. Fifth, I think, we all have the responsibility to protect human rights because it's against human dignity. If women in Afghanistan is not free, it will hurt the other women around the world. And that is our responsibility as human beings.
Dr. Samar, I am so thankful that you've taken time to help us understand what's happening in Afghanistan, and also to remind us about the centrality of human dignity and our need to protect that against threats wherever we find them. So thank you so much for your work and for what you're doing for women, not just in Afghanistan, but around the world.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thanks so much for joining us for Just Liberty. Until next time, I'm Bettina Krause. Remember, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty.